Before today's video, we would like to talk about a problem I've been having. As a content creator for YouTube, I have a large online presence. Most of my day is online, researching and answering emails. But sometimes you get that email that you question, how real is it? It may look like it's from your bank or a package trying to be delivered. Lucky for you, we have a solution. Incogni is the answer and the sponsor of today's video. Did you know that in 2022, the number of data breach victims has gone up 41.5% from the previous year, according to the annual data breach report by Identity Theft Resource Center? Some of you might be thinking, how do these people get your information? Basically, every time you fill out a new form or sign up for a new account online, data brokers are taking your information and selling them to advertisers. Without you even knowing it, your personal information is being sold and published online, which then can fall into the hands of criminals. That's when you get the emails that question if they are real or not. But that's when Incogni comes in. You can have the right to protect your privacy by requesting that data brokers delete your information. Bad news is, doing that would take years to do manually. Then you would have to start the process over again. Let Incogni do the work for you by conducting repeated removal requests. When new ones pop up on data broker sites, Incogni finds them and automatically takes care of it. All you have to do is create an account with Incogni, grant them to work for you, and then sit back and watch them go to work. So far I've had 44 requests sent on my behalf. Not only do they take care of the emails, but they also take care of the robocalls. Almost everyone gets those calls, and they are annoying getting them all day, and it is the data brokers who are selling your number to these people. So to help you fight against these data brokers, get Incogni. It's as simple as going to incogni.com/paranormally or click on the link in the description box below. And for the first 100 people to use the code paranormally, they will get 60% off Incogni. By doing so, you will be helping support Paranormally Listed. So again, click on the link below and start getting off those data broker lists.
Number 3. Jason Dalton. Kalamazoo is a city in Michigan. It's Saturday, February 20th, 2016. Jason Dalton, then 45, began the Saturday like any other day. His wife Carol, their 15-year-old son, and their 10-year-old daughter had gone out for the day. Jason took the family dog out for a walk, and they ran some errands with his best friend. After running the errands, Jason went home to nap. He intended to pick up some Uber fares that night, something he did as a side job as an insurance loss adjuster. At about 4 p.m., Jason picked up his first fare, Matt Meelan. Meelan wanted to go to his friend's house to pick up his car. The two made small talk on the drive. At some point, Jason's phone rang. Meelan didn't pay attention to the call, even though he could hear it through the Bluetooth. Something changed abruptly when the call ended. Jason slammed down on his gas pedal and started driving erratically. He sped into oncoming traffic, blew through a stop sign, and aggressively sideswiped a Ford Taurus. Jason seemed unfazed by it all. Meelan, on the other hand, was terrified. He begged Jason to stop the vehicle, but to no avail. Jason continued to drive erratically, but remained oddly calm. Jason missed the turn to Meelan's destination. In desperation, Meelan pointed at random houses as if that's where he needed to be. Finally, Jason came to a stop, and Meelan took the chance by jumping out of the car. Casey Black, who was on the porch with her husband, watched the scene unfold. Meelan told them what had happened. The ride was so bizarre, he wasn't sure if it really had happened, or if he was having a mental breakdown. Black called 911 and described Jason's silver Chevy SUV, but felt the dispatcher dismissed the seriousness of what had happened. Meelan also tried to report Jason. After getting home, Meelan called his fiancée. Shortly afterward, she posted a warning about Jason along with his picture on Facebook. By then, Jason had returned home. He prepared some guns and called his wife Carol. He told her he wanted to switch their black Hummer, which happened to be at his parents' house. Carol had the Hummer keys and agreed to meet him at his parents' home. Jason did not go straight to his parents' house. Instead, he accepted a fare from 18-year-old De'Allen Blackburn. Blackburn was going to hang out with his girlfriend, Macy. Macy placed the Uber request to pick up Blackburn. Instead of putting in Blackburn's address, she accidentally gave Meadows Townhouse's Min office as the pickup point. Jason called Macy to say he was lost. Macy gave him directions and went silent for the next 10 minutes. Jason drove in circles around the townhouse complex. At 5:30 p.m., Jason spotted Tina Carruthers, then 25, with her daughter and a few other kids she was looking after. He asked her if she was Macy or Misty. When she told him who he was, he drove off. Jason turned his car around and went back to the townhouses. While seated in the car, he took out his semi-automatic lock and pointed at Carruthers from his window. Carruthers told the kids to run. She was shot 4 times. After shooting Carruthers and presuming she was dead, Jason headed for his parents' house. As Jason drove there, he ran through a red light and sideswiped another vehicle. When he arrived, Jason hid his damaged car in the garage. Carol arrived shortly after with the Hummer keys. The Hummer wouldn't start, so he took the Chevy HHR she had been driving. Carol noticed something was off with her husband and asked him what was wrong. He explained that a taxi driver had shot at him. He then handed her a gun. He said to go into his parents' house and lock the door. He told her she couldn't return to work and the kids would have to stop attending school. Of course, Carol was confused and asked what he was talking about. He replied that if she saw something on the news, she would know it was about him. Jason then drove off. He went to his house and picked up another handgun. He then started picking up Uber fares. Around 10 p.m., 17-year-old Tyler Smith and his 53-year-old father, Richard, were looking at cars at a Kia dealership. Jason drove around the lot and parked in front of the offices. He approached the Smiths and asked what they were looking at. The Smiths turned around and said, "Yeah, we're looking at." Then Jason shot them both. He then got into his car and drove off. Tyler's girlfriend was hiding in the car and she called 911 from Tyler's phone when Jason was gone. Tragically, Tyler and Richard died at the scene. Jason sped down Interstate 94 to a Cracker Barrel restaurant in Oshtemo. In the parking lot, he opened fire on 74-year-old Judy Brown, 62-year-old Mary Jo Nye, 60-year-old Mary Lou Nye, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne, and 14-year-old Abby Koff. Abby, who was Barbara's granddaughter, was shot in the head, but she was the only one who would survive the shooting. After the Cracker Barrel shootings, Jason returned to his house for a final time. He reloaded his gun and hid the gun in his jacket. He resumed picking up fares. The police in the city were on high alert now, unsure where the shooter would go next. Sergeant James Harrison had been in the city to investigate an unrelated report of a shooting. That turned out to be a prank call, but he was on high alert. At just the right moment, Sergeant Harrison spotted a black Chevy HHR. That was the same car recently described based on the security footage at the restaurant. Sergeant Harrison called for backup and began to follow Jason. At 12:37 a.m., Sergeant Harrison turned on his lights to make a felony stop. Jason pulled over immediately. Harrison ordered him out of the vehicle and arrested him without incident. At the police station, Jason told the police that a symbol of the Eastern Star appeared when he opened the Uber app. He said that a devil head popped up on the screen when he pressed the button on the app. He said doing that transpired into the problems. According to Jason, the devil figure would give him an assignment and take over his body. Jason was given a psychological evaluation to see if he was fit to stand trial. Jason told the psychologist about the devil taking over his body through the Uber app and controlling his actions. The psychologist questioned Jason if it was possible if his mind was playing tricks on him. He said it was something he was trying to work through. Jason said he felt like he was having an out-of-body experience, but unsure what it was. He really had no other reasons for why he shot those people. Jason was deemed competent to stand trial. 5 days after the shooting, Carol filed for divorce from Jason. At the time of this video, Carol and their kids had moved away from Kalamazoo. In total, Jason killed 6 people and injured 2 others. In January 2019, Jason Dalton pleaded guilty to 16 charges, including 6 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. He is serving his sentence at the Oaks Correctional Facility near Manistee, Michigan. Number 2. Michael Taylor. In 1974, 31-year-old Michael Taylor lived with his 29-year-old wife, Christine, and their 5 children in Ossett, West Yorkshire, England. The Taylors lived a peaceful life in the small English town. Michael was described as a mild-mannered and generally kind man. However, Michael suffered from depression and occasionally became withdrawn and refused to interact with any friends or family. Michael's family believed his depressive state was due to his inability to find full-time work following a severe back injury. Despite his mental health problems, Michael was a caring father and husband. The Taylors were not considered a religious family, and they rarely attended church services. However, a friend of Michael's suggested his depression was something spiritual. He convinced Michael he might feel better if he attended a weekly prayer meeting. 22-year-old Marie Robinson led the prayer group. Michael and Robinson began to spend a lot of time together, both in and outside the prayer meetings. In some of their private sessions, they would be sitting across from each other, repeatedly making the sign of the cross. Michael believed the action was to nullify the evil power of the full moon. Some people believe that Michael had fallen in love with Robinson. Then a new problem arose. Michael became depressed when he wasn't around Robinson. Michael's wife, Christine, didn't think that the prayer group nor Robinson were helping her husband. At a prayer meeting, Christine openly addressed her concerns. In a matter of moments, the usually mild-mannered Michael snapped. But he didn't direct his anger at his wife. Instead, he pushed Christine aside and verbally and physically attacked Robinson. Later, Robinson would recall the look in Michael's eyes like a lion ready to kill their prey. Robinson believed that Jesus had protected her as she continued to call his name. The group restrained Michael while he continued to yell in tongues at her. Michael was later forgiven for his actions, though he did not remember what happened. A local vicar declared that a demon had possessed Michael and it needed to be exorcised. Michael's exorcism started at midnight on October 5, 1974, and it lasted about 8 hours. During that time, Michael thrashed, convulsed, and spat. The exorcism was exhausting for all involved, as Michael allegedly had 40 demons cast from him. But it didn't clear all the demons, because 3 remained: murder, madness, and violence. The vicar decided they were going to exorcise them later. Other people who were at the exorcism thought that Michael needed psychiatric help. Nevertheless, Michael and Christine returned home. Shortly after, Michael took some sleeping pills and went to sleep. Around 9:45 that morning, a police officer was patrolling the Taylors' neighborhood. The officer came across an alarming sight. Michael Taylor was a short distance from his home. He was completely naked and covered in blood. He was on his knees with his forehead against the ground. Michael said it was Satan's blood. The officer drove Michael back to his house, only to find other police officers were there. The neighbors had heard a disturbance and called the police. The criminal inspector exiting the Taylors' home waved the officer off. He said, "You don't want to see this one. I've never seen anything like this before. It's the wife." The house was covered in blood from wall to ceiling. 29-year-old Christine Taylor was unrecognizable. Michael had torn out her eyes and tongue. He had also ripped some of her face off her skull. She died quickly as she choked on her blood. The family dog had also died in Michael's frenzied attack. He had been strangled and his eyes were also ripped out. Michael then ripped the limbs off the dog. Michael was arrested and taken to a nearby hospital. He gave no motive aside from feeling released from the evil. At the trial, it was clear that Christine's murder could have been avoided if Michael had been given psychiatric help. Vicar Peter Vinson, one of the exorcists, initially did not believe that Michael could kill Christine, but he changed his mind after the exorcism. Christine had been warned by Sally, Vincent's wife, about going home because she was concerned for her well-being. Christine insisted on going home because she was concerned for her children. She believed that Jesus would be with her and would protect her. Ultimately, the blame was placed on the prayer group and the priest who performed the exorcism. Michael was found not guilty by reason of insanity. The judge ordered Michael to spend 4 years in a psychiatric facility. At the time of this video, Michael Taylor is 77 years old and he is still living in Ossett. Number 1. Arne Cheney Johnson. Brookfield is a small town in Connecticut. In 1981, it was home to 50-year-old Alan Bono. Bono had only lived in Brookfield briefly. He moved to the States from Australia, first living in Florida, then relocating to Connecticut. His sister lived in Brookfield and owned some kennels. She asked Bono to come help her manage them. There he met 26-year-old Debbie Glatzel and her 19-year-old fiancé, Arne Cheney Johnson. The couple lived in an apartment beside the kennels, and Debbie worked as a groomer at the kennels. On February 16, 1981, Bono, Johnson, and Debbie were spending the day together. But a fight broke out between Bono and Johnson over Debbie. Debbie tried to separate the two. Johnson stabbed Bono multiple times with a 5-inch pocket knife. Tragically, 40-year-old Alan Bono died from the stab wounds. 19-year-old Arne Johnson fled after the stabbing, but he was arrested an hour later. When the police questioned him, Johnson said that the devil made him do it. Bono's murder was the first recorded murder in Brookfield's 193-year history. Before the murder, Johnson was a regular teenager with no criminal record. He and Debbie first met when he was 12, and it was love at first sight for Johnson. The pair started dating when he was 16. Johnson moved in with Debbie, her mother Judy, and Debbie's 11-year-old brother David in 1980. Over that summer, David started acting bizarrely. He started seeing the ghost of an old man who had warned him to beware. At first, it was dismissed, but then the encounters grew more frequent and violent. David would wake up at night distraught and crying. He described the man as having big black eyes, a thin face, animal features, jagged teeth, and pointed ears, horns, and hooves. The disturbances only got worse. The Glatzels recalled David kicking, biting, spitting, and swearing. Invisible hands would try to strangle him. An invisible force would fling David around like he was a rag doll. Johnson and the Glatzels would spend sleepless nights trying to keep him in his bed. Unsure what to do, they called on paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens concluded that David was possessed by a demon and suggested they try to have their home blessed. The house blessing was unsuccessful. During one of the long nights of David's possession, Johnson taunted the demonic presence. He begged the evil entity to leave David alone and take him on. Allegedly, on the day of the stabbing, Johnson had 2 voices simultaneously come out of his mouth. At his trial, his defense lawyer tried to enter Johnson under a not guilty plea, citing a demonic possession led to the murder of Bono. Judge Robert Callahan rejected the plea. He said the defense's argument would be impossible to prove. In addition, the priests who allegedly performed exorcism on David were ordered never to speak of them in public. In the end, Arne Johnson was convicted of first-degree murder on November 24, 1981. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years of prison. In 1984, while in prison, Debbie Glatzel and Arne Johnson got married. Johnson was released in 1986 on parole for good behavior in prison. He had served just over 5 years. David Glatzel went on to attend school for the emotionally disturbed. The Warrens believe that demons still possess David. At the time of this video, Arne Johnson and Debbie Glatzel are still together. Johnson is supposedly no longer possessed by demons. David Glatzel has stayed out of the public eye. In 2021, his brother, Carl Glatzel Jr., said that he had recovered from his mental health problems. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.